I've gone very quiet all of a sudden. I'm not actually ready yet. I'm not ready yet. You keep talking because I'm actually not ready. Okay, now I'm ready. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Accessibility London number 33. Thank you all so much for coming. Really great attendance this evening, so thank you all so much for taking the time to come and join us tonight. You probably know already, but we do a lot of stuff on Twitter for the meetup. So our account is Ali London, which is A11Y London. So you can find us there. If you do any tweets today, please use the hashtag Ali London as well. And then we also have a YouTube channel. So we have a lot of videos on there, and we're also live streaming onto YouTube tonight as well. The address for that is youtube.com/C/accessibility London. So please check that out. A lot of great videos on there from previous years. So Accessibility London is a team of people. It's not just myself. There are 6 of us in total. So there's myself, there's Bryn Anderson, who's an accessibility specialist at Sainsbury's, a lady called Catherine Moonen, who's an accessibility specialist who works freelance, Ben, who is a UX professional, he's not here tonight, Aaron, who you met on the door. Aaron works for Dig Inclusion as an accessibility consultant. And then Elle's background is more in product design and accessibility. She's studying for a master's degree in disability and innovation at the minute. So please just quickly show your appreciation for all the people that make events like tonight happen. A couple of announcements regarding some jobs that are going in the minute. So there's a couple of people in the crowd. It's German, right? Hello. And is Jeanette around? Hello. Okay, so first one is, so we have German at the front here from AbilityNet. German is Accessibility Development Manager. Yeah, okay. So AbilityNet are a charity that are looking to create a more more accessible digital world, right? So they do a lot of great stuff. They have sponsored the meetup in the past. They also do a conference called TechShare Pro as well, which is worth checking out. They're recruiting for accessibility and usability consultants at the minute. So German is here today. He's going to hang around in the auditorium in the break. So if you want to have a chat with him about the roles, please find him out. Please find him. Or you can go to abilitynet.org.uk/careers to have a look for the roles as well. This has stopped working. Always the way. And then, Jeanette, you're hiding at the back. It's all right. We have Jeanette Clement from BT. Jeanette, what's your role again? Okay, so Jeanette is the head of user research and accessibility. Very important person at BT. So BT are recruiting for a senior accessibility specialist at the minute. So again, Jeanette's going to hang around in the auditorium at the break. So if you're interested in speaking to her about the role, please do. The role's not advertised on the web yet, but it will be. Yep. Okay. So. Okay. So the role is going to go up on the web shortly, but in the meantime, you can find her on Twitter at ClementCreate, or her email address is also jeanette.clement@bt.com. If you don't manage to catch any of these details, please ask me in the break or afterwards, and I'll happily share them with you. Okay. A couple of ways to ask questions during the event today. So we will have microphones in the auditorium, but if you prefer to ask a question in writing, you can go to slido.com on your phone or your laptop. And if you enter the code AL33, it will take you to the chat room that we've got set up for today. So you can ask a question in there and it'll come through to myself, and then I can relay that to the speaker. So that's another way of asking questions. Quick hands up exercise to see who's in the room. Anybody the first event tonight? Loads, like probably 2/3 of the room. So thank you so much, welcome. Hope you enjoyed tonight, and I hope it's the first of many this year. Anybody working in the corporate sector? It's probably about 30 or 40. Anybody public sector? Probably about 30. And anyone who working for a charity? About 20. Anybody working for themselves, like freelance? Probably about 15. Okay, so a good mix of people. Anybody that works in accessibility full-time? About 25 or so. Anybody who's just working in the industry and has an interest in accessibility? Yeah, most of the room, about 50 or 60. Any like user experience people? Okay, 20 or so. Designers? 20. Developers? 20. Content designers? About 5 or 6. That's because there's a massive content design meetup going on in BT tonight, so they've all gone there. What else? Management and policy? About 10. Okay, did I miss any? Testers, yeah, it's very important. Testers? About 10. Okay, so a really great mix of people. I hope you get a chance to network, meet each other, etc. Okay, so the 2 talks we have today. First is Yvette Boardley from Parkinson's UK. She's going to be talking about, not just yet, I see you're keen. Yvette's going to be talking about the digital transformation program that's going on at Parkinson's UK at the minute. We're running a bit behind schedule because, as per usual, we had some technical issues getting set up. But Yvette's talk will finish probably about 8 p.m, I would say now. We'll then have a break. It's probably going to be about 15, 20 minutes so we can get back on track. But there should be some more drinks outside. Pizza's probably all gone by now, given how many people in the room. When we come back from the break, we have some books to give away, which are here at the front. So we have 4 copies of a new book called Practical Web Inclusion and Accessibility by Ashley Firth. Ashley must be around here somewhere. He's at the back. So get him to sign it if he's still here. All the proceeds from the sales of the book are going to charity as well. Tonight's copies are free, obviously. And if print is not for you, we can give you a digital copy. But we're doing a quick draw for that when we come back. Is it available on audiobook, Ashley? Yes, it is. If you want an audiobook, I'm sure we can sort that out, yeah. Second talk is Jean-Luc Serac, who works for Holiday Extras. Jean-Luc's a software engineer. He's going to be talking about Neuro Diversity in technology. Hopefully we'll finish around about 9 p.m. At the end, if you want to, we go to a pub, which is a 2-minute walk away from here. It's called the Sir Christopher Hatton. We go out the door, turn left, cross the road, and we're pretty much there. So it's literally a 2-minute walk. Nice pub, fairly quiet, so you can have a talk. They do food as well. Although the thing I always want, they've always sold out by the time we get there. So maybe this year's different. A couple of just building things before we get started. If you want the toilet, they are back towards the lifts where we came in. Litter, please don't leave any litter in the venue. So it's always really clean when we come in. And the cleaners will come in when we leave. So please, let's make their job easy. And then there's no planned fire drills. So if the fire alarm goes off, we will need to evacuate in a calm and orderly fashion. So we'll go out the auditorium. There's doors at the front and at the back on the left and the right. And then we'll head back towards the lifts. Please don't use the lifts, but there are stairs that head back up to the foyer where we came in. So before we get started, just a quick thank you to our sponsors. So Sainsbury's, who give us this amazing space to use, and Barclays, who give us money to do things like the live captions that you see, the live stream, and the food and drinks. Without that money, the event wouldn't be as professional as it is. MyClearText, who are our captioning partner. So we have Nicola from MyClearText today. So has anybody not seen live captions before? A few people, just a handful. It's good that lots of people have seen them. So these are being produced by Nicola, who's a person, not a piece of software. Yeah, I've confirmed, not software. And then we have 2 guys from Meetup Video at the back who are running the live stream for us, and they help us get the talks up onto YouTube afterwards. So if you want help recording your events, getting videos encoded, put on YouTube, stuff like that, please check them out, meetupvideo.com. Really good group of guys can help you out with that. We are also looking for new speakers this year as well. So we have opportunities to sponsor our events. So, if you're from a company who you think may be interested in sponsoring an event this year, come and have a chat. There's different ways, that we can incorporate, your generosity. So yeah, please let me know if you're interested in that. That's it from me. So I'm going to hand over to Yvette now. We're just going to change over to Yvette's laptop, so there will be a minute or two of downtime while we do that. Just want to hold on to that.
Okay.
You want to go behind me? Pass it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. This isn't it? Yeah. So what this? Can you see it?
I'll just put mine down. And then still working. And the right. Is that all right to see?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Get the mic, please, Ludo. Just want to check your mic's working.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Good, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
All good.
Yeah, thank you ever such much. Hi, my name's Yvette, and I feel very honoured to be here tonight in such a huge audience. I'm a bit overwhelmed, actually. It's great to see that so many people are interested in accessibility. So tonight I'm going to be talking about some work that we've been doing at Parkinson's UK, and my role in that in terms of involving people with Parkinson's and their loved ones, family and friends. What we've been doing for the last, well, nearly a year now, is developing an information support service to digitally transform the work that we do within Parkinson's UK. And what I'm going to do in this presentation is talk to you about why there's this need for change, our approach to service design and user involvement, how we've been co-producing, actually involving people in user testing and user research, and building things like a user database to contact and engage people. I'm going to talk to you a bit about some stories that have come out of this work, particularly around user research and using techniques like in-depth interviews, ethnographies, and things that I'm sure you're familiar with, like card sorting in terms of like testing. And then finally, just to round off, a bit about what we've been doing in terms of accessibility on the website at Parkinson's UK. So in terms of digital transformation, how many people are going through a digital transformation phase now? Yeah? It's quite popular, isn't it? And it's with good reason, really, because when you think about the pace of change that's happened in digital over the last, 20 years, I can remember that, when Twitter first came out, and a lot of people were saying, it's just a fad. But how wrong they were. So nowadays we've got so many different touch points, so many digital channels. And in terms of people with Parkinson's and Parkinson's UK as an organisation, there are 4 key drivers. Number one is that it's been estimated that there's going to be a 20% increase of people living with Parkinson's over the next decade. And our existing service models are not able to scale to meet that demand. So we have to make some changes. Number 2 is that we want to work as efficiently and effectively as possible while extending our reach and impact. And we can do that through digital technologies because we can scale things up. The third thing is that user expectation is changing and people are looking for support in different ways. So we need to be able to change to be there where we're needed. saying that people say the right information at the right time. Always reminds me of the Martini ad. I don't know how many are old enough to remember that. Any time and place, anywhere. So our current services are basically not offering support needed to family, friends and carers. So this is like completely new to Parkinson's UK. So we're actually recognising that family, friends and carers, and we actually use the term loved ones because a lot of people that we've interviewed through our research, it's people who look after somebody with Parkinson's that do the information work, they're the ones who are searching for information. So those are the 4 reasons why we've started to implement this digital transformation programme. So I wanted to talk a bit about, hello. Sorry, I'll make sure that this is one of the symptoms of Parkinson's is dyskinesia. So it's involuntary movement. So I'll try not to do that again. But I don't count on it. So our approach. So basically what happened was in April last year, we developed a team, like an agile team, made up of people who were content developers, myself, like service user involvement coordinator, product owners. I mean, these are all terms that are quite new to me. And basically a team of people that work in a very different way across the organisation. The approach that we're taking is sprint-based, based on agile. And so we run projects within a 2-week period. So we'll have set objectives. And then at the end of the sprint, we'll review the work that we've done. We'll qualify assumptions that we've made. Very much team working, but very agile, very fast, quite a fast turnaround. So there's 4 stages to our service design process. The first one is discovery, which is looking at what the problem actually is, what we want to achieve. The stage that we're in at the moment is called alpha, where we're testing, doing user tests around hypotheses that have come out of the discovery phase. We'll be moving on to beta, which is building and refining options that have come out from the previous 2 stages. And then part of this programme is around continuous improvement, because we don't want to stop there. We want to make sure that Parkinson's UK is reaching everybody who might need information and support. So I wanted to talk a bit about co-production and involvement. How many people know what co-production means? Would you like to volunteer a definition?
Yeah, it's like when you make like a workshop with people that are affected by the problem you're trying to solve, and you find a solution together instead
Exactly.
of just getting a bunch of designers doing something that may not be the right thing.
Perfect, thank you so much, because I'd forgotten. Not really. Yeah, so co-production is a big part of what we do, from what we have been doing from the very start of the programme, really. And really, people with Parkinson's and loved ones are the driving force behind this new project. And it's all about helping people with Parkinson's and loved ones to design their own services, things that fit their needs rather than what the organisation can deliver. So I joined Parkinson's UK in April last year as Service User Involvement Coordinator. I think on the brief here I got a promotion. I was called Senior User Involvement Coordinator. So I'll take that. But my job is basically to put the voices of people with Parkinson's and people who are supporting them at the centre of absolutely everything we do. Because Parkinson's is a people-first organisation, Parkinson's UK. So this is Wikipedia's definition of what a person with Parkinson's looks like. Yes, we're trying to get the NHS to change that, or Wikipedia rather, to change that. Because people's what people think about people with Parkinson's basically, and I know myself when I first got diagnosed, I thought that's an old people's disease, isn't it? Old men have that. You know, I'm 47, I'm a single mom living in Brighton. Big shout out to Harvey, my son, who might be watching and cheering me on from university. So, yeah, people with Parkinson's don't necessarily fit that prototype. And when you go and see your neurologist, when you eventually get a diagnosis, what tends to happen is the neurologist doesn't necessarily give you the information that you want to hear, or in the way that you want to hear it. So I found this cartoon really that for me summed up my experience. Basically, I got a letter in the post that said, "Dear Miss Bawley, you've got idiopathic Parkinson's disease." And, you know, like I say, I'd had like 4 years of not being able to walk properly, not being able to swing my left arm, and feeling very low, you know, depressed. And then I realised that what was actually happening to me was that 80% of the dopamine in my brain was not there anymore, and my neurons weren't firing. So Parkinson's affects like all sorts of things like movement, mood. You have like motor, non-motor symptoms, and everyone's different. I always say that people with Parkinson's are like snowflakes, because seriously, everyone has got different symptoms. There's no one person who's alike. And like I say, my experience was going to see a neurologist who did some kind of funny things with the nose and pointing here, and didn't really understand what this was. So the first thing that I did was Google it. And of course, when you Google something, I don't know, you know, especially medical, it's like you see the worst thing possible. And then I went to see the Parkinson's nurse, who was a bit more sensible, and he said, "Congratulations, you've got the best neurological disease that there is going." So I was like, you know, jumping for joy then. But yeah, so that was my experience. As I say, people with Parkinson's, people just tend to think about the tremor. And a lot of people don't have the tremor. They might have, like, as they take medication, basically the more medication that you take, the more side effects you get. So like this dyskinesia that I have is the result of the medication, not Parkinson's. So that's why we need a cure. But there's also lots of other symptoms that don't get talked about, like anxiety, unexplained pain, cognitive issues, difficulty sleeping, slowed movement, speech changes, stiff muscle sciatica. I mean, the list goes on. Muscle spasms, loss of smell. And some of the drugs that you're given to counteract these actually have other side effects, like some medication where you can become compulsive, whether that's shopping, gambling, or sex. So I'm waiting for the sex one myself. So what we're actually designing about when we're talking about Parkinson's is people with physical or mental illness. So there's lots of non-motor symptoms. There's different types of Parkinson's, like MSA, which is a more advanced form of Parkinson's. You've probably seen, what's his name? Black Sabbath singer. Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah, he's got bat-induced Parkinson's. Not really, I made that up. So you've got people who are isolated, non-technically confident, not have the motivation. Apathy is quite a big thing. People who have speech and cognitive issues, or they don't have the time or money to access support. So that's what we're designing for. We're not designing for a tremor. So the team and myself have been actively engaging people with Parkinson's as part of this project. And we've tried to talk to people who are hard to reach or low agency, which I'll talk about a bit later. So what we've tried to do is make sure that we've covered everybody from all different walks of life, single parents, people in rural communities, people with more complex or advanced needs. And part of that has been obviously youth recruitment. And so one of the things we pulled together was an involvement plan, which looked at all the touch points that people, congregate to, whether that's online or offline. So there's things like we have a Parkinson's forum, we have a helpline, we have Parkinson's local advisors who are dotted around the country, provide local services. We engage with the benefits team to locate people on a lower income. And Facebook groups, there's a massive Facebook community. It's absolutely, there's a lot of activity on Facebook, is all I can say. And we'd had some success with doing, they weren't even paid ads, just actually putting something up in private groups, requesting if you've been newly diagnosed and actually getting those people to be part of this process. So we did a wide range of user research during this discovery phase. So that involved doing in-depth interviews with people, ethnographies, mapping out the user journey from the moment of diagnosis up until advanced stage Parkinson's. We've developed information and service prototypes to test with people, and as a result, test ideas that have come out of these conversations that we've had. So ethnographies in particular were really good because we were able to follow people, visit people in their own homes, or out about living their daily life, seeing what barriers to access they might encounter. And it enabled us to see how people with Parkinson's see the world and their particular challenges. So part of this is a bit like micro moments, really, looking at when people need support or information at diagnosis, stopping work. One of the things you have to do is contact the DVLA if you've got Parkinson's so they can review your driving licence. And things like changing medications, because the medications only work for a certain time, and then your other options include things like deep brain stimulation. So what we actually did was we made sure that we were interviewing people in low-income areas across the UK and Ireland. And you can see at the top right here, we actually went to Shetland as well, because we knew that people in the Shetland Isles had a very, very different experience to people, say, in London. And so we recruited people with Parkinson's and their loved one, carers and friends. So I just wanted to highlight some of the stories that came out of this discovery phase. This is an example of somebody in his early 40s who was living with a young family. He didn't have a steady job and he worked shifts delivering for his friend's takeaway. His wife was a teaching assistant and she's about to go on maternity leave, and he wonders how they're going to pay their mortgage. He hasn't accessed any support from Parkinson's apart from a visit from his Parkinson's local advisor. He doesn't really know what's available. So his wife speaks very little English, so she hasn't been able to look either. So another story here, Emmanuel and his wife, they'd never heard of Parkinson's when he was diagnosed, and it wasn't something that happened in Angola where he originally came from. For 4 years, he was on the wrong medication, and he didn't question his doctor's authority, even when the medication caused him to stop being able to walk, eat by himself or dress himself. And that's kind of like a common thing that happens. People sometimes get misdiagnosed, or they're on medications that are not quite right for them, particularly if they haven't got a Parkinson's nurse in the locality. So there's Ellie, single mum with 2 teenage boys. One of the son left to live with his dad when she got a diagnosis because he thought she was making it up. She has MSA, which is a form of Parkinson's, and she doesn't think that Parkinson's groups are meant for her. She doesn't go out much, she doesn't work either. Her sister gives some money to help with the bills through the local steelworks. This is one in Sheffield, where she works is threatened with closure. And that's where her ex-husband works and most of the town she lives in. So the next case was Julie, 49. She's had Parkinson's since she was 36. Her symptoms are so advanced she can barely speak or use keyboards. She used to be very active with the Parkinson's community, fundraising and speaking at events, but now she can't leave the house. And sometimes it takes her repeating something 10 to 15 times before her husband understands. So next, there's Salima cares for her husband with Parkinson's. He's depressed and is feeling increasingly isolated by the illness. She speaks limited English. Excuse me, she has no idea what support is available. No one has told her, and she hasn't asked. She can't let her friends know he has Parkinson's, as they will think it's a punishment from Allah. Money is a struggle. They survive the 16 hours a week she works, some state benefits. The last one is Annie and Ron. These are a couple who just moved into a care home after Annie had a couple of falls. They can't cope with being separated and had to move from the first home they stayed in. Apparently they used to shout to each other, night, night, and they were told not to do that. They weren't allowed to sleep in the same room and kept getting into trouble for calling out night, night to each other. And the experience for them was very traumatic. They don't use the internet, never heard of Parkinson's UK, except Annie, despite Annie having Parkinson's for 8 years. Ron's daughter had organised the move for them. Without her, they don't know where they would be. So, as you can see, people have very, very different experiences of accessing support, around Parkinson's disease. So what we did was collated all these stories. We interviewed over 70 people across the UK, Scotland and Ireland. We mapped out common symptoms, things we heard were things like, it took 3 years to get a diagnosis and I didn't know where to look for information. Or I just Googled it or I didn't really want to know, I thought, I don't want to know yet. If it gets any worse, I'll start taking medication. So there were common stories there, and what we've done is built our information support service around this, making sure that we were taking everybody's story into account, really. So in terms of testing these assumptions that we made, that people would, the information that people would want, we used a number of tools. This is one example. It's called Miro. Has anybody used Miro? Oh, right, okay, brilliant. So we use this for online card sorting, asking people to sort topics by the order of usefulness, what's important to them and at what stage of their development it would be useful. We also came across this issue about agency and need, because what happens to people when they get diagnosed, it's not a linear process. You might, have different levels of agency and need at different times. And it changes along with your symptoms and what's happening in your life. So one particular area we want to find out a bit more was this low agency, because those are the people that are likely to need more support in the future, whereas people with higher agency might be able to self-serve themselves in terms of information and content. So it's kind of like this matrix. You can have low agency and high user needs. You can have people who have a high functioning but low agency. You know, there's all different combinations here. And then you also have things like doesn't have the time or money, doesn't have any family help. They might be, you know, single parents, might be isolated. They might have another medical condition. So out of all this, we developed a service pathway with the aim of connecting to everyone affected by Parkinson's at the point of diagnosis. The second part of this is understanding people's needs and getting them to the right information and support. Another aspect was tailoring information and support proactively in terms of like personalising content. We looked at opportunities to join local events because one of the things that came out of people were tended to get isolated, and we realised the importance of early intervention to help people plan for the future. Another issue was advocacy, about supporting people to help navigate their rights, and then helping family, friends and carers with the life ahead. This is a pathway that came out of our discussions, really. How am I doing for time? Right, okay, I'll speed up a bit. So some of the experiments we've been running, we've used Hotjar on the website to track people whether they would prefer things like web chats, a telephone call. We've used card sorting. We've tested content like which video would people prefer. Would they like peer-to-peer videos, or do they want factual information? So we've done, throughout this whole process, we've gone back and tested constantly around all the information and support options we have. So where we're at now, we have devised a referral system that happens with neurologists and health professionals at the point of diagnosis, where people can, and this is all, it's not set in stone yet, it's in development. But what we want to try and do is for people to sign up to an account and actually serve them the information that's relevant to them based on their characteristics. Topics like exercise, what do you need to do next, just simple bite-sized content pieces. So things like being able to personalise your own topic area, top tips, and being able to feed back, continuously improve what we're doing is a key part of that. And here's some examples of different types of content, what to do next. So it's like a step-by-step process that people are engaged in. In terms of accessibility, we train our content management system users to make sure their content is accessible, and we use Site Improve to fix issues. We've had some general accessibility testing done last year on the website, and particularly around information architecture, which has proved more logical for people with Parkinson's. And probably like many of you, have tested our brand colours to make sure they're accessible. And we're hoping to achieve AA standard this year. So it's obviously, this process is going to develop, and part of this will be also thinking about how we can use tech more effectively. I actually got this from AbilityNet, so thank you very much. Really good content there. So there's all sorts of ways that I'm sure you're aware. There's things like voice search that is coming in that it means that things in terms of Google are going to be more accessible. Specialised speech therapy apps. There's medication apps that remind you to take your medication, and you can choose from Gollum or various different voices to tell you to take your meds, which I particularly really like. And on our website, we have got some recommendations for apps and devices that people with Parkinson's have kind of recommended, because we have things like the Younger People's Alliance group, service user panel. So yeah, I hope that you found that interesting and given you a different insight into into service design and what we're doing at Parkinson's UK. And I'll open up to any questions.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So any questions in the audience? Everyone's being shy. There's a comment in line regarding the images on Wikipedia.
Oh, okay.
So someone has said the valuable 500. You're aware of that?
No.
Okay. Who made the comment about the valuable 500? Do you want to explain? If you don't mind, I'll bring you a mic.
Valuable 500 is...
I'll bring you a mic, mate. It's all right. Cheers.
Oh yeah, sorry. You've got the valuable 500. That is basically the 500 top corporate organisations that have all collectively come together to put accessibility on board level agendas. So I would probably say to reach out to a couple of contacts there. They might be able to help you leverage and get images and things like that changed as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Because it is one of the things in the Parkinson's community, particularly for young people with young onset, it's not representative of, of the symptoms and the stereotype that it is this disease. And I mean, it's like I say, more people are getting diagnosed younger. There's an association with Parkinson's and chemicals, gut health, things like that. And I don't think many people know that the different types of disabilities that particularly around speech and movement, it's not just one size fits all, really. Thank you.
Any other questions in the audience? Yeah. Somewhere. Can you pass it down for me, please?
You mentioned, was it 70 participants that you spent time with as part of the research? Can you tell us a bit more about the length of time you spent with them and what the kind of conversations were like? So how did that conversation go and the kind of depth of detail you went into with them?
Great, yeah. 70 people. That included people that we'd actually done interviews with and testing and ethnographies. So we tended to focus the ethnographies on harder to reach or people with specialist needs. We did a mixture of things. Sometimes it would be card sorting. Quite often it would just be detailed observations, prompts. We had discussion guides, and we would prompt people around particular topics, like being newly diagnosed, planning for the future, having difficult conversations. So we had questions around particular topics and give them free rein to talk about it themselves. And then we found commonality in those responses, whilst making sure that the people that we were recruiting were, a wide cross-section of different ages, different living circumstances. One thing I would recommend is making sure that we had like a process of booking people in, email templates that were sent out with, if we were doing video conferencing, we'd send the details out by email, and then we'd have a follow-up text, and we use Calendly to do a lot of the booking, which people found very easy to use. We timed things. We always ask people, obviously with Parkinson's, it's a bit like what happens is if you have to take meds at certain times of the day. Like I take five times a day, every 4 hours, and they wear off. So it's a bit like being the Duracell bunny. You're on for a little while and then you're off and you've had it. Just watch Netflix. There's nothing else you can do. So seriously, you have to be mindful of when you're actually booking people in, and the fatigue is like a big factor. So that's something that I'd recommend, making sure that you don't overwhelm people. So we tried to do maximum 2.5 hours. For some groups of people, we gave incentives as well. But we had, I think on the database now, there's about 280 people. And a lot of those people we got through the forum. We did Google Forms and put a message on the Parkinson's forum and got a lot of people. People are so willing to help, So I think we've been quite lucky there. Does that answer the question? Thank you.
Any more? I think there was another one. Yeah.
This is not my brain, by the way. This has got neuroplasticity in it.
Hi, thank you very much. My question is, how do you intend to measure success throughout the different stages? The alpha and the beta and the rollout.
It's a really, really good question. We have a measurement system called OKRs, which, and it's something that we're actually looking at now. It's something we were looking at, like health impact questionnaires, on like depression scale questionnaires, those types of things. And there are some surveys around, self-assessment as well. So, for example, has this intervention made you feel more connected? So it's very early stages at the moment, but we will be obviously looking into that and making sure that whatever we develop is measurable. Yeah.
Any more in the audience? Yep.
Yeah, hi. You mentioned about the co-development, and I was wondering about whether, what the most surprising outcomes of that were, where the developers had made assumptions and they were completely debunked by the user groups when it came into, into like the real world, as it were, within the focus groups.
Okay, just trying to think. In terms of like actual...
Yeah, I mean, so like, obviously you, as a developer myself, I make plenty of assumptions, and often they're completely wrong. And when they get spun out to proper users, it's like, oh no, that doesn't work for us at all, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's part of the process we're going through now, because this new referral system that we've introduced is being tested in 3 locations, and with live real people who've just been diagnosed. So what we're doing is tracking what they're clicking on. So, for example, it's assumptions like people want web chat, for example, or they want... I'm just trying to think of one. People with Parkinson's don't want to know about the future. That was one thing that was true that we tested. But yeah, it's still a process that we're going through, really.
Right, okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, probably need to go for the break now. So if anyone has a question that they didn't get a chance to ask, are you going to shoot off now? Are you going to stay for 10 minutes?
Oh, no, I'd happily stay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll take a 15-minute break. Is that enough for you, Nicola? Yes. Yeah, okay. So if you come back at 8:10, please. Well done. Yeah, it's perfect. Please. So hopefully you managed to grab some drinks in the break. So we're still running a little bit behind schedule because we had more fun and games with technology. But we're going to do the book giveaway now. So as I said before, this is a new book by Ashley. Ashley's unfortunately, he couldn't stay for the whole event, so he has left now. But he's left us with 4 print copies of the book. If your name gets drawn and print is not for you, let us know. We'll sort you out with a copy in an alternative format. Okay. Welcome. So here we go. First person. Beverly, where are you? Hello. Do you want to get your book? Shall I bring it to you? I'll bring it to you because you're stuck. Wouldn't mind passing it down? Thank you. Okay. Second one. Tiffany, is Tiffany here? Not here. This happens. People go or they don't show up and then they miss out. Donna. Donna? Nope. I trust you all. What's that? Oh yeah, I know. I trust you all not to impersonate people, okay? Nick. Yes? Hello, sir. It's for you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, mate. No problem. Okay, number 3. Emily Scantlebury? Nope. Tejas? How do I pronounce your name? Tejas. This book is now yours.
He's my colleague, you just said Tejas. It was me. Thanks very much.
You owe him a pint. Okay, so one left. Alex. Okay. You go, mate. Thank you very much. Enjoy. Okay, so yeah, please, anyone who want to book, Ashley's on Twitter. You find him, Mr. Firth. We'll post his address on Accessibility London account. Please show your appreciation to him. As I say, any proceeds from the sales of the book, he's donating to charity. Okay, so we're going to hand over to Jean-Luc now, and hopefully this works smoothly.
Crossed.
Got to do the rearranging.
Oh no.
Bear with us.
I think we're good. Although I've lost my mouse. There we go.
Clicker.
Okay. Right, we're good.
That was too easy. Okay, so over to Jean-Luc.
Right. Hello everybody and welcome. I'm Jean-Luc and I work for a tech and travel company in Kent called Holiday Extras. At Holiday Extras I'm a software engineer, but today I'm not going to talk about software too much. I'm going to be talking about neurodiversity in tech. So when we think about diversity, we might think of things such as race or gender, and neurodiversity is just another type of diversity, and it's all about the difference in our human brains and minds. Essentially, no two brains are alike, and there's an infinite variation in our neurocognitive functioning. Neurodiversity represents this stance that our differences should be recognised and respected. So the term neurodiversity was first used to describe people with autism, and at the time, autism had lots of negative connotations, and this term brought about some positive ones. Today, it's still used to describe people with autism, but also people with dyslexia or dyspraxia, or ADHD, and more commonly, mental health conditions such as anxiety or depression, and people's socializing preferences, so if they're an introvert or extrovert, or ambivert. The room here is far more neurodiverse than you may think as well. So 1 in 7 here will have some form of neurodivergence. I, for one, have dyslexia and dyspraxia. So at primary school, I struggled quite a lot, and I just really hated school. I was written off by my teachers. They just saw me as someone who was slow and unintelligent. My head teacher at the time even said that I wasn't an academic type, and there was no point in me even trying to take my 11 plus. I should just go to this sports specialist school because that's all I was good at, sports. But I ended up ignoring my head teacher. I got into grammar school, but still didn't get much help until about halfway through. And I think they were a little bit reluctant to give me that help because I was getting by okay, but I had more potential there. And once I started to get that help, it was like this light had switched on. All of a sudden, my marks had skyrocketed, and I began enjoying learning and went to university. The point here is that these alternate thinking styles are largely unrelated to intelligence, and having awareness about them is really important so you can get the right support, adapt, and excel. So here are some more statistics for you. 1 in 10 have dyslexia, most of which are undiagnosed, so just because you haven't been diagnosed with dyslexia doesn't mean you haven't got it. Between 5 and 10% have dyspraxia, and about 4% ADHD. Autism is less common at 1 in 100 people, but some studies have shown that as many as 1 in 3 software engineers could be somewhere on the autistic spectrum. And that's thought to be because certain types of autism are characterized by a detail-oriented and highly analytical approach, which is uniquely suited to our roles as software engineers. In fact, many of these alternate thinking styles mentioned have positive abilities too, as well as coming with their difficulties. And I'm about to explain some of these in a little bit more detail, but first, I want to ask you to keep an eye out if you see any of these characteristics I'm about to explain in either yourself or in one of your colleagues, because remember, many of these come undiagnosed, so you might not be aware of them yet. So let's start with dyslexia, the most common learning difficulty. So dyslexia primarily affects reading and writing skills, but there's a common misconception that it only affects reading and writing skills. It can also affect things like coordination, organisation, and memory. So reading can be a big challenge for people with dyslexia. I, for example, have never managed to read a book from start to finish. I have to constantly reread paragraphs to try and comprehend them. And writing, too, can be difficult. I often have trouble transferring my thoughts onto the paper and have to keep chopping and changing them to try and get something that makes sense. Using a computer can make this a lot easier because I have this ability to reorganize things. However, this is actually one of the reasons why I got into technology in the first place, having that ability to change things and simply just avoid using pen and paper. Here's actually an example from GCSE. So I was quite old at this point, and you can see the confusion going on in this exam paper. I'm using an asterisk because I've missed a bit out, and I'm writing right down the side of the page. It's just a mess. And I don't know if anyone's spotted it yet, but if you have, please excuse my alternate spelling of igneous rock. And if you haven't seen it, you probably have now. I still don't know how I got the mark for this question. And if there is anyone that can't see it on screen, for whatever reason, I've spelt the word rock with a C. So people with dyslexia often have a weak working memory. And working memory is different to short and long-term memory. It has links to both. So you can think of working memory as the mental equivalent of like a scrap piece of paper, which is used to track and keep track of several bits of information. So this paper, for people with a weak working memory, is just a lot smaller than others, meaning they have less capacity to hold and manipulate that information. So also having a weak working memory means that it's more difficult to memorize what some people might think are everyday and easy things. So that could be things like the alphabet or the times tables or months of the year. And I struggled with all three of those. I was constantly in trouble for not knowing my times table at school. And at secondary school, I lost marks on exam papers because they assumed knowledge of these sorts of things that I just couldn't recall. I remember one maths paper in particular, and it was trying to assess Dijkstra's shortest path algorithm. And I knew that algorithm inside out. I'd practiced this a lot of times. But this particular question was assuming knowledge of the alphabet and the tail end of the alphabet, which was a little bit sketchy in my mind. And I ended up completely doing awful on that exam paper, well, that question in particular. And I came out so frustrated, knowing that I knew the difficult bit, the algorithm. It was the alphabet that I failed on, which is ridiculous. However, having said that, there's actually no correlation between these alternate thinking styles and intelligence. And even Albert Einstein was thought to have dyslexia, and he certainly wasn't lacking any intelligence. And there are benefits too. So we often hear that dyslexic learners are not made for the classroom, they are made for the world. And this is because they see things differently. Dyslexic learners can be really intuitive problem solvers, and they have this ability to think outside of the box. To me, coding is just solving problems, and that's why I think I get by okay. Dyslexics can also be misunderstood as daydreamers. You might see them staring out a window, or you might be in a meeting with one and they've just completely blanked whatever you were talking about. But the truth is, we just like to think, and if we're given the time to think, we will give you a really good answer. It might not be the answer that you were looking for, but we'll give you a good answer. You'll often see a lot of dyslexic people in the creative industries as either artists or designers, engineers, architects, people like Richard Branson or Orlando Bloom, Keira Knightley, Jamie Oliver. All these people are dyslexic and they're intrinsically creative. And that's why these people, or well, different people to those, can be a real asset to the technology industry. Computers have this brilliant ability to do the linear thinking, but in the industry we need people that can think laterally around the problem, and that's often what dyslexic learners can do. There's a really good analogy that I've heard being used to describe people with dyslexia, and it's this. The average thinker may get from A to B very quickly. It's like they're using the motorway. But the dyslexic brain is more like you're taking the scenic route. And it may take them longer to get from A to B, but think about all the things you're going to see on the way. Let's now take a look at dyspraxia, the lesser-known cousin of dyslexia. So dyspraxia is also known as developmental coordination disorder, or DCD, and it affects motor coordination. So it can also affect things like articulation or speech or perception and thought. And it's thought to be caused by a disruption in the way the brain sends messages around to different parts of your body. So motor coordination difficulties, which underlie dyspraxia, can be gross or fine. So gross movements are your larger movements, so things like running and walking. So people with these difficulties may have difficulties with balance. You can also have fine motor coordination difficulties, which are found in more delicate aspects like writing or painting. You all saw my handwriting earlier, and that's due to a fine motor coordination difficulty. I'm also very accident prone. I'm a tripper, I'm a dropper. I've already spilt water over 2 people today. And last year I even ended up in hospital from doing the washing up. Speech can also be very difficult, so people with dyspraxia might have difficult pronouncing words or converting their thoughts into speech. And they may also experience difficulties with perception. So this is all to do with the interpretation of the senses. And people might be over or undersensitive to light or noise or distinguishing noises from the background. They may also be over or undersensitive to touch, taste, smell, temperature, or pain. And they can also experience similar memory issues to people with dyslexia. People with dyspraxia may experience failure more often when doing trivial tasks compared to others. And as dyspraxia is a lifelong condition, these are experienced right throughout their life. And this may sound like a difficulty or a disadvantage of being dyspraxic, but having these failures can actually make someone that's a lot more determined and motivated and hardworking, and these are common characteristics found in people with dyspraxia. As with dyslexic learners, they have a really good ability to think outside of the box, and they're intrinsically creative. And they also have a wicked sense of humour because they've learned to make light of their difficulties and failures over time. I'm now going to move on to ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. So ADHD is a genetic behavioural condition which causes symptoms in two categories. So you've got inattentiveness and hyperactivity and impulsiveness. You can have symptoms in just one or both of these categories. And research has shown that it's caused by the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is responsible for our executive functions. While some children will outgrow their ADHD, it's still very prevalent in adults, with about 60% retaining it. As I mentioned, one of the categories of symptoms is inattentiveness. So this means people may not listen or carry out instructions as they should, and they might struggle organising tasks or change tasks often. And they can also be the masters of procrastination. In terms of hyperactivity and impulsiveness, these people might find listening to people very difficult, or they might finish off people's sentences for them, or more generally just be impatient or frustrated. They can also be very restless and edgy, which might cause them to fidget and just not being able to sit still. They might also do things in the spur of the moment without properly thinking through the actions, which can sometimes get them in trouble. Despite these difficulties, they can have some amazing superpowers too. So hyperfocus is one of these. Hyperfocus is the ability to focus all of that attention, all of that energy into one task, which makes them incredibly productive at that task. So that might be coding or reading or something like that they can do for hours and hours on end and make incredible progress. There's many successful writers and artists and scientists who have leveraged this power of hyperfocus. And people with ADHD have a real resilience and inventive streak too. It was thought that Thomas Edison, who was the inventor of the light bulb, had ADHD. And he wasn't just the inventor of the light bulb, he was a serial inventor. It took him 3,000 attempts before he made the first functioning light bulb, and this was due to his resilience. He wouldn't give up. They're also known to take risks and do things that are a little spontaneous, which others might be too afraid to do. And again, that might sound like a difficulty or that might cause problems, but at times, having that ability to be a bit spontaneous and do something that people are afraid of can be a positive. It's often not quiet around someone who has ADHD as well, and you can often get really engaging conversations from them. They are probably not going to be very quiet in a room of people. Let's now take a look at autism. So autism is a lifelong developmental disability which affects how you communicate and relate to others, and also make sense of the world. So you may have heard of Asperger's syndrome, which is a form of autism, and people with Asperger's syndrome tend to have fewer problems with speech and are of average or above average intelligence. They still have problems with understanding and processing language though. So people with autism may struggle with socializing. That can be quite difficult, and they can take things very literally, which means they might miss jokes or sarcasm or find it difficult to understand facial expressions, for example. They might also not be able to judge the tone of voice, either theirs or someone else's. And some people with autism may not speak at all or have very limited speech, and they might prefer alternative communication methods, such as using visual symbols or sign language. They may find reading people or understanding someone else's feelings very difficult too. They might also not understand someone's intentions when they're doing something. And as a result, they can sometimes come across insensitive or socially inappropriate. And these difficulties have a knock-on effect of causing problems forming relationships or friendships. Routines can be very important to people with autism. So let's be honest, the world is an unpredictable place. And people with autism often like to stick to their daily routine and know exactly what they're having for lunch that day and exactly how it's made. They might like to sit in the exact same seat, or all these different things that they like to do very specifically. They can have highly focused interests too. That might be art or astronomy or computers. And these interests can be intense and last a lifetime, or equally they can also evolve over time. Computers can be a particular interest, and that's because they're ubiquitous and there's no need to navigate the social challenges that's involved in many other activities. They may experience the similar sensory sensitivities as people with dyspraxia as well, which again can cause a level of anxiety. However, there can be benefits too. They often have a lot of passion to put into these interests that I spoke about. It can make them highly motivated, and they're often tuned very acutely into the detail, which means they can identify patterns and trends which may seem impossible for a human to identify. And that can make them great cybersecurity analysts, for example. The truth is the truth for people with autism as well. They're unlikely to tell any white lies, and this can actually make it easier to communicate with them because you'll get the truth from them. Likewise, they often don't judge people like others are more accustomed to sometimes. And again, that can make really good communication and positive relationships with them. So we've now finished looking at the most common alternate thinking styles. Let's take a look at neurodiversity in the workplace. So in recent years, there's been a growing body of academic research that suggests neurodiversity has tangible benefits for businesses. Yet historically, recruitment processes have created barriers for the neurodiverse workforce. And companies are just not prioritizing neurodiversity in their diversity and inclusion efforts. As you can see on the graph behind me, disability is well down on the list. People who are neurodivergent are more likely to be unemployed and underemployed, which means they're working below their skill level. And according to research from the National Autistic Society, just 16% of autistic adults are in full-time work, despite 77% of those wanting to be in full-time work. And this is all despite the strengths that they have to offer. However, there's a growing number of big firms who are looking to access this neurodiverse talent. Here are just a few examples. We've got the BBC up on here, Microsoft, IBM, HSBC, and there's more. Businesses want their workforces to be representative of the 1 billion people worldwide who have a disability, and it means that they'll be building better products and better services, better websites, which better represent the people using them. One initiative I think is great is from SAP, the global software company. So SAP started an Autism at Work program about 6 years ago, and they hired 140 people with autism and have a goal of 1% of their workforce, which is around 650 people. Some of whom they hired had really struggled to get a job. They might have graduated in a degree in computer science, for example, and gone a year without employment. So they were taking chances on these people. And the program includes a one-month screening process, an interview process, involving some unconventional assessment methods. So things like building Lego robots, which you can see on screen, according to a highly detailed set of instructions, which is more going to help these people succeed. Some candidates do better walking and talking, so they take strolls around the campus, for example. Or some prefer to have discussions in larger groups, or smaller groups, or one-on-one, and they did what it takes to get the best out of the candidates. They also supported them with extra coaching, sent them on training sessions to develop their social skills, and they made workplace adjustments where necessary, for example, fitting a canopy over Michael's desk here, just to provide some relief from the fluorescent lights that are common in office places. Microsoft and Hewlett-Packard both have similar programs to these. There's others, there's a growing number. What can we do? First off, educate yourself and your team about neurodiversity and why it's beneficial. If people are around neurodivergent colleagues and aren't aware, then our differences in communication styles and thinking styles is going to cause them to assert unconscious biases on them. Awareness is key. Getting to know your colleagues is really important so you can understand their difficulties and needs. That means we can make adaptations where needed, and it means that could be, for example, encouraging someone to contribute in a meeting because they find speaking up difficult, or not pressuring someone to go to that office party because those loud situations with lots of flashing lights are just not for them. We also need to think about the recruitment process. So traditional recruitment methods can be to focus on a candidate's social skills or ability to fit in culturally rather than their skills to do the job. Practical methods like work trials are great at bypassing these barriers. Being flexible and helping the candidate show the best versions of themselves is the most important thing here. So we need to be mindful of our wider impact in our day-to-day job too. So we should be ensuring our websites are accessible. I'm sure many people here are trying to push for that. That includes the markup, the design, content, products will work well with neurodivergent users. So focusing in on that last point about designing products for neurodivergent users, I want to share with you my top 5 design tips for doing just that. So number 1, avoid overloading the UI. Keeping a clean interface, free of pop-ups and compacted information helps people avoid that cognitive overload that we want to avoid and that they might find just too overwhelming. A common excuse for adding things like this is, well, the legal team made me put it there, or the product manager made me put it there. You have to do your best to push back in these scenarios. I know it's difficult, I've experienced it. It's very important, and take the battle on, head on. So for each of these tips, I've got some examples to help illustrate them. I'll try and describe them if anyone can't see them up on screen. And I just want to say this is not a finger-pointing exercise. I've tried my best to remove the organisation's names. You might still recognise the UIs. It's nothing against them in particular. It's just, this is commonplace in the industry, so it really is not against them. So these 2 examples both suffer from overloaded UIs. The one on the left has lots of different sections and functionality all condensed into a small mobile device here. On that one screen, you've got a cookie banner, you've got some search functionality, you've got some ratings, you've got multiple buttons to initiate a chat, and you've got 3 buttons to initiate a product comparison of some sorts. It's just unnecessary. And the example on the right is showing 3 pop-ups all at once, which again is unnecessary when people just want to read the article, which is in that tiny gap between the pop-ups. And these are hurdles that the users just shouldn't have to jump through. So this one is massive for me, segmenting content. If I see 3 paragraphs of text not broken down on an article, whether it's online or on paper, I simply won't read them. It's a subconscious thing. It's not something I do on purpose in spite of the people that have written that. It's a subconscious thing. So we need to break up blocks of text for people to help them consume it. And there's lots of techniques for doing that. And there's some of these on this slide. So this example, I've just come up with it. The example on the left, which is the better version, makes use of bold text, lead text. There's some strategic subheadings in there. It uses block quotes, all nicely formatted to give lots of space around different sections and segments on the page. You can also use images, iconography, they're great as well, breaking up your text. And the difference to the one on the right that I described with just the big blocks of text is huge and makes it so much easier to consume. Number 3, reduce urgency. So persuasive messaging and timed transactions can cause this sense of urgency, which is just detrimental to users. As mentioned before, some people need that time to complete the actions and make those decisions. They just need the time. Others can experience anxiety or upset from the pressure as asserted by the messaging or the timer ticking down, timer of death. And businesses will claim these sort of practices are required, and there's a very small edge case that they really are actually required. But this kind of practice can definitely be reduced. So we've all seen examples like this before, messages that say, you've got 10 minutes to complete this purchase, or that a product has been booked 20 times in the last 2 hours, so you really need to get it now. Or using the red, all of these are using the colour red, which adds to the danger and urgency of not booking these things. And the example on the right, every single hotel here is all in high demand, apparently, miraculously, for that company. So number 4, tolerate errors. However intuitive or however many might have motor coordination difficulties, or they might just, and on the platform they're using. So it doesn't mean, well, you can ring our call centre if you've got an issue. Some people don't like talking on the phone. Let them use the platform they're using, give them the option to reverse the mistakes. These are 2 great examples of this. So we've got Google Mail, which when you send an email, it's really smart. It doesn't actually send the email until a couple of seconds later. So it gives you the opportunity to undo sending that action. On Amazon, you can edit the delivery address. I've done this so many times. And after you've placed your order, you can also cancel the order before it's been dispatched, which again, it's really useful. You've ordered the wrong product, for example, a slight variation. These things are perfect for people that will make mistakes, and that is all of us at times. So number 5, reduce motion. So don't autoplay your videos, just don't do that. So the user can choose when and if they want to play that video. Avoid excessive animations. Some users can find them distressing, or it can just be a cause to leave. Parallax scrolling as well is just a typical example. It's an optical illusion, which gives this sense of depth, and it too can cause unease. So much so, when Apple introduced parallax backgrounds in iOS 7, they were inundated by requests to limit that motion, hence the feature that came along to reduce that motion on your mobile phone that you may have seen now. And there's plenty more examples of excessive animations. I just didn't want to include them on here because I'm telling you to reduce those excessive animations. So these are my top 5 design tips for neurodivergent users. I did struggle to get it down to 5. There's plenty more. Please help share the word and challenge people to consider these things. You will always be designing for a neurodivergent audience, so remember that. If you would like to identify neurodiverse traits in yourself, then you can visit this link. I can share it around afterwards or give it to you in person afterwards. Just come and see me. The test that is at this link has been through multiple revisions, and there's been a lot of research that's gone into that. And it has 121 questions. It sounds a lot, but it shouldn't take 15, 20 minutes or so to complete. And when you complete it, you get one of these cool spiderweb graphs. Maybe everyone doesn't think it's as cool as me. I'm just a bit lame. But it gives you a PDF document with all the results, and it does a really good job of explaining those results. So the results that you get from them, ultimately, they're still going to be a bit primitive. It's not going to solve your life's problems, but it might just give you this awareness, which is really important because it will help you develop coping mechanisms and just make your life easier. Just try to become aware of these things, either yourself or people around you. Thank you all for listening. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc.
Thank you.
Any questions in the audience? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
On the recruitment side of things with the workplace, is it something where people should be very upfront about the neurodiversity that they may have? Is this something you need to sort of declare up front, or is it where you wait till you got the job and then you sort of pass it on? I'm not too sure, and kind of where I'd also, if you could just clarify between where it's something that could well affect your job and the way that you work, or where it's a sort of side effect and not maybe related directly to your work.
Okay, so in terms of recruitment, there's two sides to it. So if there's someone here, for example, going for a job, definitely be upfront about it. But also, you need to keep in mind, if you're in charge of recruitment, that you need to have that ability to try and get those details out of people. So on your recruitment pages, for example, you might need to have a field to try and get those details out of people. But you have to be aware that people also might just not be aware. They might be undiagnosed, or they might not want to give you that information for whatever reason. So on the recruitment, if you're doing interviews or assessment days or something like that, you have to be aware of it again, and just give people as much opportunity as possible to declare those things, and ask them questions about anything that could get that information out of them. And what was the second part of your question? I've forgotten it.
Well, it was just in terms of whether it directly affects their work or not.
So in terms of if it affects their work, well, organisations have to make adjustments for people, so they can't, if it's going to take someone a bit longer to do a certain job, they have to make adjustments. It's part of the law, so companies should be aware of those things, and if they're not, then you need to remind them that it's their responsibility to make adjustments, whatever that may be, if that's fitting a canopy over Michael's desk, for example, or letting someone sit at the same desk each day. Those things they have to do.
Thank you.
Any more in the audience?
A couple at the front.
Hello, thank you for such a great talk. You mentioned that your list of top 5 was difficult to keep it to 5.
Yes.
I'm really interested in the long list.
I have got it on another page here, but if I touch this, it's all going to go. Okay. So see me at the end, and I'll get it out, and we can have a look at it. Because I won't remember them off the top of my head.
There's one over here, mate.
Hi, you described me in everything.
Yeah.
And I do struggle at work because they always have an issue with my dyslexia.
Right.
Are there any tools that you use in particular that help you?
I use quite a lot, and I've tried quite a lot as well. So Grammarly is like the saviour for me in terms of spelling. Even though my spelling's not as bad, it's not one of my weaknesses, it's a saviour, I think, for anyone. So if you haven't got that, they've got like Chrome extensions and everything. So Grammarly, I use text to, I always get this muddled up, text to speech, yes, that way around. Software, sometimes if there's an article that I really want to read, but it's too verbose for me to look at it, I will use that sometimes, and that's built in to macOS, so that's good. What other tools? I did try Dyslexia. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a special font that you can install, and they have a Chrome plugin for it as well. So Dyslexia is a special font that's been designed for dyslexics, and it's a little bit like Comic Sans, and you might smirk at that, but Comic Sans is notoriously good for people with dyslexia. And it's very similar. Each character is very different, so you don't struggle to identify the differences between the characters. So it might be worth giving that a go.
Okay. Anyone else? Just because I've already... Is that all right? I've given it to you once already. Okay, I'll give it to you in a second, if that's right.
Hi, that was a very good, interesting presentation.
Good, thank you.
The question I've got is, you know the link about people doing assessment?
Yeah.
Is that a free link or is it?
Yeah, I have no ties with that or anything. So I think a lot of it has been constructed from like a lot of public research and stuff. So
and the report it produces is free as well. You said a PDF.
Yeah, it's all free. You get results you get a results page, and you can download that in PDF format afterwards.
Right.
It's all free, so give it a go.
Well done with the presentation.
Thank you very much.
This isn't a question, it was just to add to the list of software. I don't have dyslexia, but I have, I need to to tweak the colours I use on the screen. I use an extension which is really badly written called K or Rise, which allows you to change the background and foreground colours of everything, which might be helpful. You can also use Claro Read and Claro View, but I think those cost money.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Did you have another question? There's no one else? No? Okay, there's one comment on Slido, not a question. Yeah. Note that Asperger's is now grouped with autistic spectrum disorder and not its own diagnosis. Of course, many folks do still self-describe as having Asperger's.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. Unless there's any more in the room, I think that's it, mate.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, mate. You want your thing? I'll nick it. Do you want your... Okay. Okay, cool. So just before everyone goes, just want to say a quick thank you to everyone for coming tonight. Really appreciate the really big turnout. Thank you to everyone that helps me organise these events. Thank you to all the sponsors who feed us, let us record it, do the live captions. And thank you to the speakers. Yvette has already headed home. Jean-Luc, thank you so much as well. We're hopefully going to be back in April, I think. And we're also planning a big event for May for Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So just in some initial discussions with that at the minute, but just to give you a heads up, May 21st, hopefully a big event coming from us in collaboration with UXPA UK as well. So yeah, if you want to come to the pub, please do, and we'll see you in April. Thank you.
Hi, mate. Saying right at the beginning there about people wanting people to present.
Yep.
I'll work for HMRC.